Building a seven-figure business, I mean, as I said, that's the only slide. If you want to take a photo of it, you can take a photo. It's done now, the slides are out of the way. But yeah, building a seven-figure business was the topic I was speaking to Leo about. And essentially, the background on me is I've been focused on people that invent things, and they're originally coming out of universities mainly, and they built things but they couldn't commercialise them. So I thought that was a good calling for me. And then probably 8 years ago, I joined StartMate, and I got a little bit more obsessed, if I wasn't already obsessed, with helping people commercialise things, like doing a deal, helping them find customers, helping them understand what it is that they've got and what are the paths to monetisation. So that sort of stuff is something I really enjoy. And then finally, I thought, well, hopefully, I also measure myself, am I any good at it? And I think that I did a quick little back of the envelope calculation and thought, well, last 10 of my clients I've helped them raise $350 million, and their turnover is probably 2.5 times that. So I think I've got a tiny bit of information in this area. So, but having said that, whilst my background is in finance, the thing that I really enjoy is working with people. It's a bit of my calling is doing a lot of things to help people rather than looking at numbers. So don't get too scared. We're not going to talk about numbers today really, but in a way that you're used to. Okay? So the first thing I wanted to make people a little bit aware of is that there's only really 3 things I want you to remember. And that is that this building a 7-figure business, let's assume you've already got a 6-figure or you're about to start, but it's all about you. There's so many misinformations out there. Like, so many people read blogs and they read or listen to podcasts, and they get all this information, or they read growth hacking. But the problem is with that is that this isn't for you, right? Even the world's best growth hackers, they come up with all these. They might run 1,000 formulas before they find something that works. So you can't go to that answer. It's not going to be the answer. You have to be the central theme or the central character in your business. If you're not doing that, then you're not really learning, and you're going to potentially not get the result you want to do. So, and I think, and you'll hear a little bit about from the panelists the next event, that Australia can sometimes follow that rule where they look at something like an Eric Ries's book and Startup Canvas, Lean Canvas, and let's build an MVP. But the problem with that sometimes is that when you're looking at an early show of success, like you've either got something that people are using, that doesn't mean you have to double down. That isn't necessarily something which is actually going to be worth giving up the next 6 years of your life for. You've really got to focus on that. Could be early adopters. It could be, potentially, someone's bought it. So what? But it's about how many people will buy it and on how big a scale will buy it. And I know that Andre is a very big fan of finding out, really life-changing behavioural stuff at a big scale. So, as I said, it's not about building an MVP or even saying you've got product market fit. You've got to have people buying it monotonously and really understanding your channels. So you're not necessarily going to get all of those things. Whilst I'm a big fan of accelerators and VCs, it comes back to you. Like you've got to work out where you get this information. What are the things that make the biggest difference to you and your learning? So there's a process to go about learning. And the key thing that I think that is important, or the 3 things that I want you to take away today, are that the biggest thing that scares the shit out of founders is cash flow. Now, it's, and even we read about things on Startup Daily, and people have raised $24 million or $1 million or $2 million. The work's just begun at that point. And to be honest, it's not a celebration, it's panic stations for most people, because they don't know what to do with that money sometimes. They can say, this is great, I've got this money, I can hire all these people, but you've got to really get good at managing growth. So, and I was thinking about, why do people really struggle with growth, and why do they think that raising money is they know it's not the job done, but they think once I've got the money in the bank, it's going to be easy, or money will solve my problems. Money won't solve any problem. That goes back to you. So the first and foremost thing that I really think that we really need to get comfortable with is you're no longer an X, right? You're no longer an engineer as a CEO. You're no longer a marketer. You're no longer, one thing. You're the CEO, so you've got to not be afraid of the numbers. A lot of people get out there and they think, well, I'm going to pitch, and they've got this massively passionate pitch. But the founders that I see that raise money, they combine two things. They combine passion with reason. Right? So you need to have an equal amount of both. Right? You can't just say, I've got this amazing thing that's going to change the world, because people, investors, your team, so you're selling the vision to your staff and you're selling equity to your investors and to your customers, you're selling product or future. But the key thing that you've really got to understand is moderating and managing your cash flow. And so a lot of people are afraid of cash flow, but if you're going to be a CEO, you can't delegate it. You've got to get good at understanding the numbers, how they iterate, and the ratios and the patterns that you're seeing and all that sort of thing. These are the absolute must. They're not, someone else will do that for me. If someone else does that for you, it's okay to have, as the company grows and be, across multiple countries and jurisdictions and currencies, you can get help, but you must not be afraid, or you must embrace those things. You've really got to understand the resources. And then not everyone is good at, there's no magical formula here either. It's how much risk you want to take, because you need to assess yourself and say, how much do I need in reserve? Like, what are the things that people happy to be on fumes, other people need lots of money before they attack. You've really got to understand yourself there. And not a lot of people say, but it's not my strength. Well, it's got to become your strength. You've got to get better, or at least competent with knowing ratios and numbers, etc. They are the things that really make the biggest difference. And one of the things I try to use and speak is in analogies. Cash flow is not the domain of the accountant, right? Cash flow is essentially you thinking about, in another way, how many experiments have you got left, right? Because you've got to work out, I've got this many things I can try, this many things that I'm going to approach and look at the different ways of things are behaving and what am I learning from that. And that's how you need to think about cash flow. How much have I got to get to the next level? And think about it as a resource, not a number on a page, but a resource, a number of experiments that you might have left. And in that process, you've got to discover profitable channels. So you've got to understand, if you can't find a profitable channel, or if you've got some revenue but it's incredibly expensive to find that customer, then that's not a profitable channel. You've got to work out, again, you, not anyone else, and it's you, this is your job to find out, explore and find out where else is a profitable channel, or how can I drive that down, that cost of acquisition. And so the other thing too, I guess, is in managing money, this is about money or resources. It's not about profit and losses, promise you. It's about resource management. And that is, you've got to understand, again, the price of capital at the moment. The scarcity of capital is a function of how much is out there and how much is, yes, sure, you're making progress, but the cost of capital is something you need to understand. Now, if you're playing a long game, which you need to do, but if you need to get to revenue fast because you haven't got much money left, or there's some things that you have to approve to get to the next level, generally you need to have a very close eye on the wind on that number, getting to that point. So where generally I always say first 20 people are usually going to have something to do with product and revenue. So getting that particularly early traction. And then finally, on the cash, I guess, is that accelerate when you can see the road. When you're actually looking at something which is proven, not a little bit of that early signs, like a few customers. You've really got to have a deep, proven business channel. And when you have that proven business model, that's when you can go and ask for some money. But having said that, I always think that, and I was actually having a chat with Alicia before saying, look, it's not that you have to go and see a VC. You are really going to look for advice and finding the people in your team and around you that are going to help you get better. And that might start with angel investors. So, and if you're looking at auditioning angel investors or finding your community and people that can help you in the gaps that you have, that's often a good start. It may not be, I'm not prescribing one thing over another, but you've got to work out what you need and what your gaps are. And then if you do that well, and if you obtain that rockstar investor panel of angel investors that are getting you further down the track, then instead of going out with the begging bowl, right? And saying, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I've got this happening. Look at all this product market fit that I've got. You can audition the best venture capital firms rather than be saying, I need your money. Now, sometimes you might just need their money, but that's never a good approach in my view. So, call to action in this area. If you haven't worked it out, it's all about business acumen, and you've got to get comfortable with knowing numbers, not profit and losses, but knowing the core relationships with them. So think about like you're a mad scientist saying, what amount am I putting in there? You know, what direction, what speed am I allocating those resources? And am I controlling the plane properly? Am I heading towards the earth? Unfortunately, the earth. So the second thing as a founder, particularly early days, is about obsession over customer. If you don't have a product, you're selling the future. If you've got a product, you're selling the product. But you really got to obsess and understand, go deep with the customer. You can't spend enough time in front of a customer. You've got to learn and see what their behaviour is, what their thinking is, and looking at where the future is. A lot of people think, I've built this product, I'm going to flog it to death, I've got product market fit. But there's not many companies, and I'm sure you can't really think of too many companies out there that have got a single product. So you're going to be thinking about the next version or the next market or where the competitor's going or what is it that customer's going to need. And the good news is if you solve one problem, it'll give you another one to solve, right? So if you can eventually work out that you have to obsess over those people, like absolutely know them better than they know themselves. I often call it describing their pain or articulating their pain in a way that they really feel that you get them. So that sort of deep knowledge of customer is so important as a CEO. And you can never give that out. That's your job, particularly early on as a CEO. You've got to be the customer service, the customer champion, the product owner. I mean, you're the CEO of product, for want of a better word. So in this takeaway, we covered I want you to get money. I want you to get resources and the flow of funds and resources and the interaction of how fast and whether or not you've got product market fit. The second thing and the second takeaway essentially with product is understanding that you've got to win the market, but inevitably it's going to involve usually a multitude of products in the market and if you think about the biggest companies, the most successful ones, they're almost an ecosystem of things. There's not just one thing that they have one product and you go elsewhere. They try and control payments. They can try and control products in the marketplace. They've got SaaS, marketplace, all sorts of things. And that's that constant experimentation you've got to have. And I've referred before the number of experiments that you can do or you have before you fall off the ledge. So that's the second part, the second takeaway. The third part is that, as I said, you're just no longer a CEO, right? What you are, you're no longer a one thing. You're not an X. You're not an engineer. You're not a marketing person. You're not a salesperson. You're all of those things. But your main thing in this role is to get better, right? Because the best will win, right? So it's to win that market and manage the cash. You've really got to do that very well. And I think the other thing that really gets people coming along as hard and fast as you really need them to do is that you need to make sure with your staff and your team that you are constantly reinforcing the vision and the mission. Day to day, bring them back and say, why is this important? Why is this? Because a lot of people don't cope with multiple things to do. And there's got to be, in early days, once you're at that six figures, you've really got to be super focused to get to that next seven-figure sum. And that is if they're doing multiple things and they're running off saying, we need to test this, we need to find out that, we've got to work out what everyone has to do. The key ingredient here is contracting time. So and that's your job then to absorb all this chaos, which is plenty of those things out there, and be able to distill it back into a manageable bite-sized piece that is core to the things we've got to keep focusing on as a CEO. So that's the second part of that. And finally, I guess, I'd have to say that building an 8-figure company has nothing to do with how hard you work, right? It's essentially the things you find out on that journey and the things that you discover and the people that you meet, and unfortunately too for. No matter how talented you are, it's a lot of luck as well in that. There's meeting people, there's not losing people, there's deals happening, deals falling over, things that get you out of bed, and how you cope. There's a million different arbitrages and scenarios that come into that. So, and as a CEO, the final piece of the puzzle is, I think, really, particularly at that 7-figure stage, is really being able to be one of your best marketers to staff, as in retaining, attracting talent, because you are the chief storyteller. You are the person who will obtain the best person. And then every founder I've ever spoken to has always said, the one thing I'd do differently is I'd start with better people. The one thing, they wouldn't raise more money, that's the consistent message. Start with better people, right? And learn from those people. And you don't have to be the best at anything. In fact, being a better people person is probably saying, well, if I'm always the best, no one actually is going to try and surpass me. So if you're the dumbest person in the room, you're in the right room, So it's a very important thing to be, is humble. So as I said before, and thinking about that CEO and understanding the speed and the direction of the money that you are spending, like those experiments on, what order am I spending money? Am I hiring a salesperson before I've got leads? Am I hiring a marketing person when I've got, haven't got a product to market? So you've got to think about the ingredients, and that comes back to that central theme that a CEO is, and their most important job, if I can dumb it down, is facetiously, don't run out of money. But the only way not to run out of money is to get better at managing it. And I cannot put enough stress on the fact that it doesn't matter how much money you have, if you get better at managing it. And you will hear later, I'm sure, that a lot of VCs like people to be good at managing money. Investors, angel investors, like people to be good at managing money. It is not just about the passion you have or the market you're attacking or the size of the market. It is how good you are at two things, right? And that one of those massively is your resource management skills. So I think in summing up the process around, because I'm trying to condense this into 20 minutes, it's not that easy. But summing up, what I wanted to leave you with is that in this journey, no one does it alone. Right? The key thing that you really must do, and this is the hardest thing, is to know yourself, right? And to surround yourself. So there'll be 2 or 3 things that are really hard to digest as a founder that you might really not have experience in managing people, sacking people. These are hard conversations. These are conversations, but you have to get comfortable with that staff turnover. You've got to get comfortable with being able to tell the truth. If you don't tell the truth and you say that's good and it's not, you run out of money. Or if you don't have a product that's released on time, well, the things you've got to get accountability in. It's not just it's great and we're all going to change the world. It's reason and passion, remember. So it can't be just one thing. You've got to be resources, honesty, and leadership. Those are the things that you really got to work on. And that will take you, right? And one of the things I mentioned, finding more profitable channels, finding better people, finding things that make you a better CEO, which is the key to it. So at the end of the day, if you are up for this challenge, you will take your company from 6 to 7 figures. You will find people in the journey that, I like to call it, there's almost the 5. Right, so there's the person that you are chasing. So the person who might be 18 months ahead of you in what you're trying to do. They may not be a competitor. They may be building a marketplace, or they may be building, but they've been, or they're in front of you. So that sort of camaraderie, friendship, or advisor is a good person to have. Someone who's got growth skills. So someone who gets, management of money and management of experiments, or someone who gets profit. How do they discover profitable channels? Someone who has either domain experience or what I call like your covers or your gaps. You need that person. And I guess I'm not sure if that's 4 or 5, but obviously you're in that. So you've got to be super, super, super keen to get better yourself as a founder. Now, if you don't get better as a founder, a couple of things will happen. You'll get sacked, or someone will, surpass you, or B, you're just not going to win, and you're going to blow up people's monies, their lives, etc. So that's it. You've got to get better. So that's all I wanted to say.